All right, we are back. Brendan, how's it going today?
Pretty good, Liam. How about you?
Not too bad. It's just you and I today. Ahmed has a sick pup at home. His youngest boy, who's a huge Oilers fan, Isaac, hasn't been feeling well, so Ahmed's at the clinic with him. And it's up to you and me, man. Might actually get some work done.
That's good parenting. I know there's a lot of nights where good parenting takes the role of precedence over watching an Oiler game, but we usually catch up in the highlight section later.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that yet, anyways, hopefully. Um, all right, man. Big week. Lots of stuff to cover. I think we should get into the goaltending. I mean, seems like we can't stand a minute without talking about the goaltending. Big move. Obviously, unless you're living under a rock, you know that the Oilers made a big trade last week, two big trades. I think the second one's pretty significant as well. Stuart Skinner's gone, and Tristan Jarry's in. Brett Kulak's gone, and Spencer Stastny's in. So, how are you feeling, man? What do you think?
I've been a big advocate for quite a while, probably since the end of the 24 season, and certainly at extended times in the 25 season, and about 1,000 times on this podcast since the end of the 25 season, that the Oilers are a very capable and good hockey team, but they will not win a championship with Stuart Skinner in that. Well, that is proven to be 100% true because they now cannot possibly win a championship because they no longer have Stuart Skinner. So it would seem that Mr. Bowman eventually agreed with my thesis that even a lateral trade might give them a better shot at winning a cup one day. And this does feel in a lot of ways like a lateral trade. You're taking a goalie that is a known entity in Stuart Skinner for another known entity in Jarry, and you're comparing what their play is like at this moment. So you could say that during the regular season last year, that Skinner looked better than Jarry. And you could take a look at the regular season this year and say this year Jarry looks better than Skinner. So if you're just going on form, the outcome looks good for the Oilers that they're getting a goalie who's playing more consistent and higher quality minutes than Stuart Skinner has been during this particular campaign. And then we can have the conversation about what's the ceiling for these goaltenders, what's the potential, what is the likelihood of their winning in the playoffs, what's their, grit, determination, mentality, toughness, whatever those, other attributes are away from just the stat sheet. And I think that the Oilers will very quickly rally to Mr. Jarry as the goaltender, provided that he can get them some early wins out of the gate. And the performance against Toronto was a pretty decent start in that. So my analysis of the trade is that it's a hockey trade. It's one player for another player, giving both guys a fresh start, and then hopefully by getting that fresh start, you get a much more improved result on the ice for your team.
Fair enough. My perspective on this move, I think optimistically this is a lateral move. A big question mark for me is Jarry's durability. Throughout his entire tenure, he has not been proven to be durable. I was joking around with a couple people. I don't think you and I had chatted yet, but Jake Wallman being Mr. IR, needing some company, so they decided to go out and get Jarry to help him, not feel so lonely on IR. I hope that's not the case, but that's a big concern for me is looking at the durability part. Listening to Stan Bowman in his press conference, I actually didn't listen. I just read it, which is kind of, I guess people don't do that these days. They either listen to it or they watch it. But I read it, and I felt a little bit better after reading that Jarry's been on their radar for a while, and they've been talking about it since the summer, and they've evaluated him heavily. That made me feel a little bit better, saying, that he's been fairly consistent his entire career. They went back and looked at the data aside from last year. But I can't help but just a little part of me starts to get very frightened because that's the same narrative that I heard about one Trent Frederick, right? They did some extensive scouting, and he's a type of player that we sorely need. They don't make a whole bunch of those guys in the NHL, and therefore we've got him for 8 years now. Now, I don't want to make this about Trent Frederick because, we're talking about the goaltending here. So, but I just, that trust aspect of this regime just isn't there right now for me. And that makes me nervous. The other thought I have, and I shared this with you when the trade went down, is, it seems as though we tend to overpay for guys when we need to bring them in, and we don't get enough for them when we're shipping them out, right? We're giving up. I mean, I understand the dollar requirements, but we're taking on a guy with 2 more years at a cap hit of like 5.3 or 5.4 million. And you can argue that we got weaker on the blue line. So is this team really better? I mean, the next move, I like Stastny's game. Stastny looked pretty good against Toronto. He looked less good against Montreal, but the entire team looked less good against Montreal. So maybe we'll give him a pass. He's supposed to be maybe a clone of Kulak, a younger version of Kulak, but I think we're going to sorely miss that experience that Kulak brought. And on a team where you mentioned the Toronto game, I thought Jari was pretty good overall, except for that first goal. Didn't like that rebound. It looked like a Stuart Skinner rebound. And our defense, Evan Bouchard was standing right there nonchalant. Had he taken the guy, regardless of how bad that rebound was, that goal probably doesn't go in. So with that, I think there's an argument to be made. Our defense got slightly worse. So if we got slightly worse on the defensive end, is this move really going to move the needle in the right direction, right?
That's a pretty good analysis. I want to just give some small credit to our friend Ahmed, who said that the Oilers are going to have to move out Kulak in order to deal with the cap crunch. He said that 3 or 4 podcasts ago, and so I feel like this is a solving 2 problems at the same time kind of situation. Like just to try to get a little more headroom in the cap world, they did need to move some money out because even if they didn't make a trade, they're probably still a little bit heavy with guys like Kapanen and Janmark and these other guys coming back into the lineup, Hyman and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins
Well,
coming back.
they still haven't solved that because they just brought in, right?
They've gotten all this money for a goaltender, which I think no matter what goaltender they're going to find in the marketplace, they're going to have that problem. I think that was a huge issue, that whether you bring in somebody off waivers, if it so happened, or if you go out and make a trade for somebody who's more established, it was always going to cost at least, $4 million a year. So they were going to have a problem with the money no matter what.
They absolutely were. Absolutely.
So the trade is what it is. You're trading a player that has got a lot of wins for the Oilers, especially in the playoffs in the last couple of years, for somebody who has a lot less playoff experience and who's been really a career backup for the most part. It reminds me a lot of that Talbot signing, or trade, I should say, where they brought him in from New York as a career backup goalie who was ready to make that next step, and just roll the dice on Cam Talbot. Obviously, they got Talbot for a song though. So to go to your point about asset management, they could have probably got Jari on waivers last year if they thought he was a good enough backup goalie. And they liked Picard more than they liked Jari as a backup goalie in 2024 or 25, I should say. So how much more do you like him now based on his performance over 15 games this season? And that performance is worth a 2nd-round pick and Brett Kulak and Skinner in order to make up for that 15-game performance metric. I mean, it's a big package going the other way relative to what you're getting. And
I mean, a guy that we might be sleeping on is Sam Poulin, right? He's got almost a point a game in the AHL. I don't know much about him, but maybe he's somebody we're sleeping on. But remember, he is coming the other way. So I don't know.
If he turns out to be an NHLer who's playing minutes, if he's playing 15 or 20 minutes a night at some point in the next couple of years, the Oilers win that trade. Right? It really comes down to that last component of the deal.
Since we're going down this direction, let me just chime in here really quickly. We'll pivot back to the goaltending. One of the thoughts I had last week, and believe it or not, people are going to be shocked to hear this. I was kind of warming up to Skinner. I felt like, the last 10 or so games, he was doing all right. And again, there is that, he has a tendency to get in and go on these heaters, and then right when you think that he's turned a corner. So I get all of that. But there's some stats that I saw last week, and I don't remember if we had chatted about this, but I had a couple conversations. And this was even more alarming than the goaltending situation. It's Henrique, Frederick, and guys just in the bottom six, just getting absolutely caved in. If they're not playing with like McDavid or Draisaitl, they're basically getting outscored, or goals for, goals against, triple. And more than even the goaltending situation, doing a deeper dive in the last like month and a half or so, thinking that if we improved just bringing in a fringe third liner that's going to do more than what these guys have been doing. I mean, at this point, I'd take, I think Quinn Hudson's up, right? I would have just put Frederick in the press box to see what's happening. That was my thought, was, the bottom six has been atrocious this year.
We're living out all the predictions that we had in our summer podcast and our early preseason podcast, where we said, if this is the plan that they're going to go with in net, and this is the plan that they're going to go with in the bottom six, I think it's going to be a struggle. Yeah. And that's become reality. So the two are interdependent, right? If your bottom six is getting caved 5-on-5, well, then suddenly your whole 5-on-5 game looks atrocious. And you're not producing anything from the bottom six at 5-on-5. That's been a knock on that team for years. It's obviously not getting any better. In fact, it's probably gotten worse this year. And then the goaltending isn't bailing out those bottom six players either. And the defense overall, from 1 through 6 on the defensive core, are markedly underperforming this year relative to last year. Whether they're underperforming relative to their capacity, I'm not sure. But compared to last year, your 6 defenseman core was playing much better hockey last year than they are this year. So you have shaky goaltending, less reliable defense, and a bottom six that's getting beat 5-on-5. Like, that's just a recipe for disaster. The fact that they're within a striking distance of, a playoff spot, third in the division, really goes to show how productive some of the top players have been. Again, McDavid, Draisaitl, Roslovic when he's been healthy. Hyman's obviously producing in the limited time he's been on the ice. Like, they're getting, Nugent Hopkins, they're getting wins, they're getting points, despite what's happening in the other 100 feet of the ice. And I think that they need to get that sorted out, in the next 40 games. Otherwise, it's going to be a lost season. But I think the trade that they made recently, the trades, multiple, is probably enough to just kind of tip them in the right direction. The schedule is helping them. We saw that with the results they got on that last homestand, where they're finally getting some home cooking and getting some more consistent efforts on home ice than they get often on the road. And I think we can see where this team is trending and where it's heading. And I think that, projected over the next balance of the season, obviously we're not knowing what the final roster makeup looks like after the trade deadline, et cetera. But given this roster, I think it's one that is going to scrap with LA the whole rest of the way for that third spot in the division. We'll see how Anaheim holds on the rest of the way. But they're probably in that wild card / number 3 in the division kind of spot the rest of the way. And then you spin the wheel, you roll the dice in the playoffs and see if you can get, that experience to pay off against playoff opponents, see if that goaltending lives up to the expectations, and see what kind of results you get. It's a good place to be. Like, it's not a disaster season, but it's still kind of on a knife edge halfway through the year.
Well, I just think that, you've got the best player in the world, who, thank God, is starting to look like McDavid. The last week, 2 weeks, he's been on fire. I think it was before the Montreal game, 16 points in 5 games or something like that, something crazy. But, when this guy comes and signs for 2 more years and at the same number that he was making the previous contract, and then you go out and you, like, I don't know, like, as you were going through all that, all of this stuff was going through my mind, starting all the way back with Adam Henrique, right? He had a good 24 playoff with Connor Brown and Matthias Janmark, made up a pretty solid line, probably was the best line in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. We extend him for 2 years. Right after that, and this is Jeff Jackson, and this is Connor McDavid's guy, right? Jackson tells Ken Holland, bye, we don't need you, or whatever, enjoy retirement, decides he's going to go out and handle free agency before he figures out who the next GM is going to be. Goes out and doesn't re-up Warren Fogle, tells him bye-bye. It's like, we're going to bring in Jeff Skinner instead for 1 year. We're going to bring in Victor Arvidsson for, 2 years at $4 million. So that's basically Fogel's money. But not only that, but on day one of free agency, Calvin Pickard gets a 2-year deal. Adam Henrique gets like a 3-year deal or whatever it was. What is it with this franchise? And I mean, flash forward, Frederick with 8 years, Wallman for 7 years.
I mean, this is what happens when you have a team that's been in the final. You get a little bit of Sean Horkoff contract signing mindset, where you're giving big numbers to a guy that's not won, but because he carried the team in a key role a long way into the final, and suddenly everyone's got good feelings about the situation, and they just invest heavily into keeping that good feeling going, thinking that they're that close. A team that did not make it to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final doesn't re-up Henrique the same way, right? If they got bounced in the first round, there's like, okay, what else can we do in the bottom 6? He's a good depth player, good bottom 6 player. The money was not crazy. He probably had lots of other options to go somewhere else too, but they wanted to get him back. They thought he was a key component.
I understand all of that. I understand that. I understand that. You go on. Same thing with who?
They were trying to bring back the band, right? Corey Perry is a similar situation. They just wanted to keep the group intact because they felt like that group, if they had another crack at it, was going to get it done the second time. And they clearly didn't. So now this year they're paying the cost of keeping the band together for the last second run, right?
I get that part, and I understand Bowman came out and he said, that was sort of the plan after 24, but he wasn't here for that, right? And Bowman did make some tough decisions. Connor Brown is no longer here. He's not getting $3 million or $4 million or whatever the Devils gave him. Corey Perry got $4 million. He's not here. We've gotten faster. We've gotten a little bit more youthful, but it's these Henrique type contracts that are anchoring this team, right? It's bringing on Trent Frederick. Did we really need to give Frederick 8 years? I mean, again, I promised we were going to pivot back to the goaltending, but we are here now. So chime in on this and maybe segue back to the goaltending again.
I think the reason that the Oilers did not win a Stanley Cup in any of the last 4 seasons, when clearly they were in the mix for the last 4 seasons, has been just the assets and the roster composition and the way that they've built that team. So the goaltending was a very important piece of it. And how they assembled their supporting cast behind Connor and Leon has been a very, very big piece of it. And I think that they did a better job on the supporting cast than they did on the goaltending. The goaltending almost worked out in spite of itself, I think, in some ways. And
the goaltending is a tough thing, though. We look at Stuart Skinner, and we've talked about this before. It's not really Skinner's fault. Skinner came in, he was just, trial by fire. He wasn't expected to be the starting goaltender the year that he became the starting goaltender. This falls on Ken Holland and the Jack Campbell move, which again, when it happened, I was livid. And I mean, this organization tends to do that. They're taking a shot on somebody who's had one decent year, but 10 years in the minors, and they're like, oh, he's turned the corner. And I mean, we've been burnt by that. And I understand you get burnt, you have to take shots. But really, like, these are shots that do they really have to take? Like, did they really have to sign Jack Campbell to a 5-year deal?
Again, this is what makes a difference between winning championships and not winning championships. They made missteps that took them further away from the target, and they made some steps that took them closer. So overall, I mean, getting Evander Kane and Corey Perry were steps that took them closer. Getting Jack Campbell was a step that took them further away. And when you look at how all of those trade-offs balanced, they were a little bit further away than the trade-offs that the Florida Panthers made, for example, where they get a guy like Sam Bennett for a second-round pick because he was being discarded by the Calgary Flames. They bring in guys like,
you know what?
They bring in Brad Marchand on a pretty good-looking deal on their part, and it works out. Whereas some of the
we didn't want to pay the price, so we ended up with Trent Frederick.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So what was the better trade-off? And it turns out the team that overall has the more pluses in the column at the end of the day wins versus a team that had fewer pluses in that column. Like go back to every championship team. Every championship team in history has a few guys on that roster that weren't doing as well somewhere else, and then suddenly the winning championship team took a risk on them and it worked out, and that was the difference maker on those teams.
I mean, even Chicago, right? they gave up Seth Jones and they got Spencer Knight, right? They're getting value for guys that they're shipping out. You know, you mentioned Florida, and I can't help but go back and think that, you know, our good friend, what was his name again? Bob Nicholson. Is that his name? Yeah.
Bob Nichols.
I just Sideshow Bob is the he came out and talked about that whole forensic audit and all of that when Peter Shirley came. And then he came out and said we didn't do anything, we just hired Shirley. And he did essentially the same thing with Holland. But at that time, Barry Zito, the guy who's behind the Florida Panther construction, was up and running for, he put his name in the hat for the Oilers GM role, right? And then the guy in Colorado that succeeded Sakic as well, at some point we could have had him as well. I mean, you know, I can't help but think about that, right? You know, Barry Zito's doing what he's doing, and we bring in Jeff Jackson, and he decides to re-up, you know, Calvin Pickard, and I understand, but Pickard actually last year probably outperformed his contract, and it looked like a decent move. But that extra year, this year, I mean, he's arguably been brutal. He's been good the last two outings, right? Last Montreal game, I thought he was pretty good.
Calvin Pickard was arguably one brilliant Game 5 away from being a legendary goaltender for the Edmonton Oilers.
Pretty much.
He just needed one really strong game that didn't go well, and then who knows what happens in Game 6 if the series is 3-2 in Edmonton's favor going into Florida. So, yeah, it all comes down to some very, you know, knife edge, flip the coin kind of moments, and who's going to be better prepared. I think we're dealing with frustration in fandom relatives, and by that I mean the Oilers are in the championship round a couple of years in a row. They're in the playoff mix this year again. They have two of the greatest players ever leading the roster. They have good quality players up and down the lineup in other positions who sometimes play great and sometimes struggle a little bit, but they're not a bad hockey team. And here we are. It's kind of like being a New York Yankees fan where you just expect them to win because they have all of these great players on the roster. And why don't they win at the end of the season? Because they assembled all the right pieces. Like, that's the frustration. That's a way better situation to be in than, you know, being a fan of the Buffalo Sabres or the Vancouver Canucks or the Calgary Flames or the Nashville Predators or any number of other hockey teams who have genuine problems winning hockey games. So yeah, it's frustrating. It's hard, but it's a matter of they're not getting that extra mile that they need to win a championship. And that's really hard because they have, you know, these two legendary players in their team right now, and they should be winning championships. But
we're also not, it doesn't feel like we're taking a step forward. Like the 24 team, I would take that team over the 25 team, and I would take the 25 team over this team, right? So we're not getting better.
No,
and that's the frustrating part.
But again, we're living the reality that we predicted at the start of the year. Like, given the players that they brought in over the summer and given where everything is, this is not a go forward team. They're not going to get to the championship round. They're not going to get to the Stanley Cup final, most likely for a third year in a row. And they didn't get better. They're paying the price this year for the success that they had last year. Like, they mortgaged some of their future.
But that success
they mortgaged some of their future.
Year,
they mortgaged some of their future for a shot last year, and they haven't quite dug themselves out of that debt yet. So,
but they last year's team, inarguably, was worse than this team up until mid-November, right? Worst record, look slow. Really, the team didn't really start to move until we brought in Jake Womack, right? That's when we started to look a little bit faster.
That was a pretty late addition in the season. I was like February or something. When did he come in? It wasn't
trade deadline pretty much. But right up until then, we were getting smoked most of the. I mean, we went on that little bit of a heater, right? I don't know. I just you know, let's go back to Jari. I think that the style of goaltending might be better suited for Edmonton. You could tell. I mean, I texted you when he made that save, the breakaway. I think it was Nylander or was it Tavares, one of those guys coming in, and he made it look easy. We hadn't seen a breakaway stop since Pickard made one against whoever it was barreling down on him in Game 5 or Game 4, whatever.
He made a breakaway save against Tampa Bay, I think, when he had that 2-1 overtime loss. That was There was one.
Oh, he did. He made like 4 or 5 breakaway saves in Montreal.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That looked like a beer league hockey game where there was a breakaway every second rush.
that was ridiculous. But yeah, I know, like Jari looked good.
The Oilers were scheduled to lose that game in Montreal, and they deserved to lose that game in Montreal. They
Well,
were
you know what's funny? We were talking about that. You and I talked about a scheduled loss. The weird part about that is Montreal played in New York the same night on Saturday. Edmonton got into Montreal before Montreal did. So really, if there's a team that should have been tired and had a lull in the second period, it shouldn't have been us, right?
Okay, fair point.
But
it's still a scheduled loss when you're on a second day of a road trip.
They haven't won. They haven't won back-to-back yet. No. I thought a funny story with Kulak. I mean, and this is the other thing, we don't realize this, but these guys are friends. They're humans at the end of the day, and they're friends. And, you know, they've been together. Kulak's been here since 21, right? You know, he's the guy that makes the reservations when they're on the road, right? So he got traded on Friday. They're heading into Toronto. I think Draisaitl or someone was like, yeah, so, like, I know Kulak just got traded, but do we call him to see if he's made reservations? Because where the hell are we going to go and eat, right?
They just roll in expecting that he made them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, there's that aspect of things. And I mean, you know, like looking at Jari looks like I think he was saying that if I got to leave Pittsburgh, I want to go to Edmonton. And he wanted to come to Edmonton. I think that had something to do with it. But again, I can't help but think, okay, well, we're spending $5.3 million, whatever we're doing. What was wrong with going out and getting John Gibson? Oh, well, Aleem, John Gibson has injury history. Okay, well, Tristan Jarry has injury history as well.
So do any goalies over the age of 30s. Like, just the way that they play, you're going to deteriorate your knees and hips no matter what. That's just the reality of modern goaltending. You're going to have injuries, and it's going to get progressively worse after the age of 30. Before we get into that, though, I just wanted to ask you, like, what do you think the general managers of the various steakhouses across the NHL are doing to try to get the Oilers' business? Do they have the guy identified who's the new decision maker? Who's the new decision maker? Yeah. I'm thinking it's Frederick, so that he can feel like, you know, he's contributing somehow, right? They're not just going to go out for popcorn. Get in the press box.
Oh my God, Frederick! I thought he was starting to play better, but I mean, I guess Montreal, everyone had a tough evening, except for Calvin Pickard. But I mean, McDavid made sure that he was going to have something to talk about after that game. That I don't know what the hell he was doing on that second goal, but. Yeah, I don't know, man. I just like even this trade for Spencer Stastny. I like the player. Just but from he has all the tools. It looks like, you know, he's got a good shot, skate. He went through something very similar that Noah Felt went through in terms of, like, he took last year off, mental health. Apparently, he's a new man. You know, hopefully it works out. But again, you know, all the coaches and, you know, there's rumors around, like Stoffer, everybody saying that Wallman's not working on the right side, right? So we go out and get another left defenseman when we get rid of Kulak, right? So right now we've got 4 pretty solid left shot defensemen: Nurse, Ekholm, Wallman, this guy. Am I missing somebody?
You got Emberson and Regula. Which one of those are left?
Well, Emberson and Regula. I mean, we've got 4 on the left side, right? And then we got Emerson, Regula, and Evan Bouchard. So we've got like 2.5, maybe 2 solid guys on the right side, right? So again, I just don't know, and it's not. I mean, it's not a knock on Bowman. I was feeling the same thing towards the end of Ken Holland's tenure as well. And I mean, let's not even talk about Peter Chiarelli, right? I don't know. It just seems like, and like, I was watching Jarry against Toronto, and, you know, I hope this isn't what's going to happen come playoff time, although he's probably the winningest save percentage wise in playoff history, Mike Smith. He kind of has Mike Smith vibes. He's athletic. He plays the puck really well. He can move side to side. but I'm really hoping that, he's better than Mike Smith, because Mike Smith's tenure with us. I mean, we had 40-year-old Mike Smith, so maybe if we had, 30-year-old Mike Smith, it'd be different.
That would be a different story. Having a 30-year-old Mike Smith playing for the Oilers in 2022, I think would have made a pretty significant difference to that particular team. But you're getting Jarry with a lot of miles left on him, I think. He's 30. He's not a rookie. He's got years of experience. You're a known entity. And what has he shown in most of those, 8 or 9 years of NHL experience? In every single year, with the exception of last year, he's going to give you a 900, 910, 915 save percentage, and he's going to give you a goals against average around 2.5 to 2.6.
When he's healthy.
Yeah, when he's healthy.
When he's healthy. Now, you can be like one of my...
If he can deliver that for a year and a half, I mean, that's amazing news for the Oilers, because when you have consistent goaltending like that, the question becomes, like, can the Oilers score 3 goals a night? If Jarry's going to let in 2.5, can the Oilers score 3 goals a night? I think the answer unequivocally most nights is going to be yes.
Yeah.
And so
we found the formula, though. We just need to win.
You're gonna rack up points if you can get 3 goals a night. Your goaltender's gonna at least get you an overtime point every single night. That's amazing news for the Oilers.
That's what the hope is. But I mean, is he going to be able to stay healthy? And do we? You know what? I don't think we're done. I agree with Elliot Friedman. Maybe the next move is bringing Connor Ingram up. But again, what's going to happen salary-wise? That's the big problem that we've got. We've got Kapanen, we've got Wallman on IR. Who else is on IR? There's one more person that's on IR, right? Roslovic's on IR, right? So someone's going to have to be shipped out to bring on, like, to make sure that we're cap compliant at some point, and it's going to be someone significant, or 2 people, right? Unless we just somehow Frederick high ankle sprains his ankle sprain. I don't know.
Yeah. I wonder, Roslovic's been amazing, but I almost wonder if you trade him, because you could get a lot for him.
Can you, though, on an expiring contract?
Yeah, maybe, but I guess you probably don't have any strategic reason to do that. You want him on your team in the playoffs.
You want him on the team in your playoffs. Somebody told me, though, that Kulak is worth nothing because Ahmed actually said this, because he's not going to re-sign in Edmonton, and he's got an expiring contract. My response back would be, Kulak is getting paid like a number 6, but he's probably going to be giving you number 4 numbers in the playoffs based on...
You can slot him into any NHL playoff team in your top 4 and get him in under the cap. So if you're trading Kulak just on his own, he's probably going to bring you back at least a 2nd-round pick at the deadline.
Exactly. So why did we have to throw in a 2nd-round pick on top of Kulak and Skinner?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I think it's an overpay unless the draft pick or the prospect works out, I should say.
Poulet, yeah. Is he related to Marie-Philippe?
I don't know. I hope so. She was pretty good.
She's pretty good.
Can play hockey, check.
I mean, he's got some decent numbers. 22 points in 26 games or something in the AHL. But who knows, right?
Yeah, when was the last time the Oilers managed to convert somebody who was lighting it up in the AHL into a bona fide NHL player? It's been a while.
Been a while. Leon Draisaitl wasn't killing it when he was in the minors.
But maybe some players work out. Maybe Kapanen gets back in there and looks good, or maybe Clattenburg gets back from that eye injury and gets back to what he was doing the first couple of games he played. Like, there's a lot of reasons for optimism amongst Oilers fans. It's not like they're going through a struggle right now. They won 4 of their last 6 games. I think even that Buffalo loss, they were pretty close to pulling out the win when they didn't deserve it.
At least they got a point.
They got a point, right? So, like, if it goes that you're getting a point in games you don't deserve to win, more often than not, you're going to look good at the end of the season, and that's really what needs to happen down the road.
It really helps that you have a guy like McDavid, who's probably one of 2, maybe one of 3 in the NHL that can just turn it on whenever the hell he feels like it and get you a point, right, when you don't deserve it. If there's one thing is, I mean, I'm very happy to see him looking more like McDavid, right? He's starting to shoot the puck more, so that's a good thing. I mean, yeah, I guess it's not like this whole podcast seems like I've been feeling like, we need to, like, pull a Vancouver Canuck here and, rebuild. That's not what I'm saying, but it just the underlying theme is asset management, and that's been my concern for years, right?
Let's take that off ramp just to talk about it because I think it's fun. So, what's your take on the Quinn Hughes trade? I thought that the package they got back was pretty decent, but it's again a long-term question mark as to what they're getting back versus a very known quantity in Quinn Hughes.
So here's on the weekend we had a hockey game, and obviously being in Vancouver, there's maybe one other fan that was there. Everyone else is Vancouver Canuck fans, so we were talking about the Quinn Hughes deal. I feel like I look at Colorado, right? Colorado to me is sort of the standard. Last year, Mikko Rantanen, who was on an expiring contract, they were able to move him, and they were able to get a pretty decent return for him, right? At least a proven roster player who was a point-a-game guy, right? The response I got was, well, Rantanen's one of the best players in the NHL. Well, Quinn Hughes is probably one of the top 3 defensemen in the world. Is he not?
I think so.
It just feels like from I'm not familiar with these guys on the Wild. I understand the defenseman that they got has a lot of potential, but you just traded. Where did they get Quinn Hughes at? Number 6 or number 7 or something like that?
Yeah. 5.
And this guy went behind Zane Parik, right? The defenseman they got. I just feel like they didn't get enough, and he's got another year left on his contract. Everyone's talking about that the only way I see this working out is if Vancouver completely tanks and they get a top 5 pick, top 3 pick, and they get a decent pick from Minnesota. Otherwise, I feel like you lost this deal. Personally, everyone's telling me I'm out to lunch and they got a haul for this, but I don't know. All these guys are going to be like this other guy's supposed to, his ceiling is a solid second line player. The other guy's like a solid third line player. These aren't guys that move needles, right?
No, I think that I'd agree with your assessment. You're getting a player that's going to make a fundamental difference to your team on the blue line, and he's going to be your number 1 defenseman no matter what team you go to in the NHL, with the exception of maybe a couple of landing spots. He's now your number 1 guy.
I mean, honestly,
in exchange, you're giving up Rossi, who's really just like a 20-goal scorer. Right? He's basically Kyle Turris, right? You have somebody in Zeev Buam who's a pretty decent defender with a lot of upside. So he's basically a top 4 kind of defender right now with the ability to move maybe higher up up to a number 3 or maybe a number 2 spot one day.
So like just even on that, you're giving up a solid, no questions asked number 1 D-man.
Yeah.
For a guy who at best will be a number 2, right? And you got a second line center, I guess, at best. Anyways, go on.
And you get a prospect and a pick, or you got an NHL ready prospect in Olgren, who's just starting out his NHL career, and you get what's probably going to be, bottom half, let's just say bottom like 20 to 30 kind of pick overall. Question, like knowing Vancouver's draft history, whatever they pick at number 25, whatever it is probably going to struggle to find a home in the NHL one day. So it's a bit of a pile of golden beans at this point relative to the known asset that they have given away. And I think this trade 100% makes sense 12 months from now if you have Hughes on an expiring contract going to a playoff team, because it looks like a January, February trade deadline kind of deal for a rental player who's at the top of his game and who's going to be your number 1 defenseman. But the extra year that you're getting under contract makes the trade really tip in Minnesota's favor.
Well, exactly. And I mean, that was my point exactly, that you just articulated there better than I did. You've got this guy for an extra year, right? We look at just this deal. You could probably, like, there's other teams that are like November Thanksgiving, right? November 28th or whatever it is. Quinn Hughes his agent calls and tells the Canucks he's not going to re-sign here long term. He's tired, blah, blah, blah. We're just letting it go. And within a month they move him, right? And my train of thought is, I mean, very similar to the Oilers and the way their management behaves. You're acting desperate when you don't need to be acting desperate. You want to deal from a position of strength. Like, I mean, if you look at the goaltending situation as well, there are other teams in the NHL that have a lockdown. Pittsburgh's one of them. They've got 4 goaltenders in their system. Columbus has the same thing. Detroit, there's a couple of other teams that are in the same position, right? So if you hold on a little bit longer, maybe you're going to get the deal that works for you, and maybe you're, I don't know. Same thing in this situation. The Devils are after him. Minnesota's after him. Detroit wanted him. Why don't you get these guys a little bit more desperate, right?
That's a good thought. That's a little bit of a head scratcher, asset management wise.
You don't need to move them at this point. You suck anyways. You're not winning with them. So if your plan is to tank, you can still tank with them, right?
Yeah, I mean, if he's coming into the rink unmotivated and he's going to make the team worse, I mean, he's not diminishing his personal trade value significantly, even if he has an 80% effort going in most nights.
He's still going to get 80 points, right?
Yeah, right. He's still going to be a number 1 defenseman by the trade deadline next year. Unless you get some freak injury, he's still going to get you a haul pretty similar to what they got yesterday or last week.
Yeah.
But you get
you still have the opportunity
12 months of use. And maybe if things go differently in the schedule, maybe they get a winning streak together. Maybe, I don't know, Demko plays 50 games without getting injured. Suddenly the team's a lot better, and then you're in a way better position of strength to make a trade. Or maybe even get that extension then. He doesn't want to
get that extension, which is exactly. Or you know what? It doesn't work out. You still have the offseason to move them, right? You could even move them at this deadline, right? And just, anyways, whatever.
So it's just nice to know there's a franchise out there that's managing its star assets worse than the Oilers are.
Well, I mean, yeah. Another team that just boggles my mind, if you look at the Buffalo Sabres, they're oozing with talent. They got, I mean, I don't even understand. I mean, they play us well, but I don't understand why they're in the position they're in because, on paper, they look good, right?
Just one of those teams you can't win against. We'll go back and look at the win percentage of the Oilers all time against backup goalies. It's probably not great. And against some franchises, they can't figure it out.
But I mean, just Buffalo in general, though, in the last, I'm going to say all the way going back to like 2006, I've liked their rosters. I don't understand, like 2006, 2007, probably the best time to be a Buffalo Sabre fan because you were 1 game away from like making the Stanley Cup Finals or 506, whatever it was. But that roster, like Daniel Briere, I don't even remember who else, but like Goalie, Drew Stafford, all these guys, all the way down. They had Eichel, they got rid of Eichel, but now they've got Alex Tuck and Tage Thompson, all these guys. Who's the guy they got from Josh Norris, right? The defense, Owen Power, Rasmus Dahlin. They got another defenseman there as well. Like, even in net, I mean, like in a lot of ways, take away, take that roster over our roster. Understand what's going on, right?
Yep, I don't know what's going on there. There's a cultural rot of some kind that exists within the Buffalo Sabres that's just not rectifiable.
Sad. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is a pit of darkness for any player that ends up going there that they will never get anywhere close to the playoffs, let alone the Stanley Cup. Prove me wrong, Buffalo, but that just seems to be the way it is right now.
Well, isn't it insane? Like the year that Taylor Hall went there, I mean, that roster again on paper was on fire, right? They had Skinner and Hall, I think, and they still missed the playoffs, right?
Yeah, it's been bad, but somehow they beat Edmonton every time. So there's always that.
Yeah.
There's always those two games to look forward to.
At least they can beat the Oilers. Anyways, man, I don't know if we've really come to a conclusion on this. I guess big games tonight. Jari's probably going to get the start against Pittsburgh.
Is Skinner getting the start against the Oilers?
I don't know. I mean, you think they're going to give it to him? Did his visa clear? He hasn't even been with the team, right? Him and Kulak. So these last 2 blow-ups that they've had can't really be attributed to him even being in the room because I don't even think he's been in the building.
How do you get Jari into the roster the next day in a brand new
he's Canadian?
All right, okay.
Because he's Canadian.
Yeah. Yeah.
You should ask Donald. What's up with that, Donald?
It's tariffs. They're blocking him with tariffs. I think if Skinner gets the game against the net, he'd be very motivated and also probably let in a couple of bad goals against the Oilers. So
you think so? If Skinner gets the net, I think he's going to shut us out. I'm scared.
No, that's not happening. Too much pressure. He doesn't deal with it. He'll get that shutout in the game that doesn't matter. He always does. He'll look brilliant against, like Detroit in a Tuesday night game, but I don't think he's going to come up with a big W against his old team. Oilers win in Pittsburgh, and based on the current trend, it'll be thanks to a massive third period comeback where they score 3 or 4 goals against the Pittsburgh Penguins because it seems to be the script that Pittsburgh's playing with right now.
Yeah, they'll be down 5-1 early. We'll go grab some dinner and come back, and they'll be 5-5, and then we'll be ready for overtime.
It's happened a few times against Pittsburgh this year. Toronto did it. They were getting crushed for 40 minutes, and they came back and won. That was about a month ago. And then back-to-back performances against San Jose and Utah, where they had the game just basically locked up in the third period, and then suddenly it's a tie game, and then they're scrambling to, not give up the point and, not getting the win in overtime either. Those are pretty tough losses for a team to take. So, I mean, I expect them to be motivated, but who knows what the goaltending situation is in Pittsburgh.
It was Seelovs and one of their young guys that they're high on, right? That were in net for both those games. Yeah.
So all arrows would point towards Skinner playing in that game if he's available to be on the ice.
Well, I hope he does get his visa sorted out, because I kind of do want to see him play. Let's see what happens. I agree with you, though. I think we're going to win.
What's the rest of that road trip look like after the Pittsburgh game?
Is it Philly or Boston on Thursday?
They played Philly already, so it must be Boston.
I think it's Boston on Thursday. Boston. So, will the trend continue? Will Trent Frederick find himself in a Boston Bruin? Because Ahmed was right. Are you going to be right? Let me just take a look at the schedule. So we've got Boston.
It's Pittsburgh and then Boston and then
Minnesota.
It's a tough game on Saturday, and then that Sunday game against Vegas looks really tough before they come back.
What's up with these? Like, we're back from the road trip on the 21st, 5 p.m. versus Vegas. Whatever. And then we got Calgary on the following Tuesday, right?
Yeah, back-to-backs against Calgary.
It's back 23rd and then 27th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think by the time they get to the new year on December 31st, they'll be in pretty good shape. But there's going to be some bumps along the way in the next 7 games or 8 games. It's just, I just think that Minnesota-Vegas back-to-back combo is going to be pretty tough for them.
That is going to be tough. So we better beat up on Pittsburgh. We better beat up on the Bruins, because I feel like we're going to be in tough on the weekends.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see what happens. I mean, we'll be back here a week. We'll see what Ahmed's up to. Maybe if he wants to jump in and chime in, we'll maybe jump in a little bit later this week if we've got time. Otherwise, we'll get his take on this Jarry move. Anything else to add before we sign off?
No, I think that's it. Go Oilers go. It's pretty good in Oilers country right now. They got the goaltending situation exchanged. Whether it's solved to be determined, but at least we don't have to watch Skinner make passes to the opposition and then directly into the back of the net anymore.
Jesus. Before we sign off, though, quickly, do you feel like we're going to have a Jarry Picard combo by the time season's over, or do you think we're going to see more changes?
I mean, if Picard keeps putting up 4 goals against every game, you have to swap out your backup goalie before the playoffs come. You can't deal with that as the backup. He's been very consistent in letting in 3 or 4 goals every game. So you can upgrade the position, I think, fairly inexpensively. And
what's the dollar numbers look like? Do you know how much Ingram makes?
No, I don't. But they're both under $2 million, I think. So it doesn't really matter.
Calvin Picard makes $1 million, right?
Yeah, but I don't think Ingram's much higher. So I don't think it's going to be a numbers issue.
Just have to put Frederick on IR. I'm telling you, I'll solve a lot of problems.
Yep. Well, he just tell him to go crash and bang and he'll put himself on IR for a while.
All right. Okay, we'll sign off. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And we'll see you in about a week.
All right. Sounds good.